For goodness sakes, let's quit comparing Tim Cook to Steve Jobs.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's broadcast of the Jeff Heilman Project. My name is Jessica and I'm here with my amazing husband, Jeff. And today we're going to be talking about the new iPhone 15. Now before you either turn it off or turn it up, depending on what camp that you're in, maybe we should have a little bit of a discussion. We should have a great conversation. I think we're going to have a great conversation about innovation because that's really what today's topic is. We're going to be using the iPhone 15 as a exploratory platform for talking about innovation. But before we go ahead and get started and jump right into that, how was your week, Ben?
Week's good. Started a new job during the day. And
Yeah, I wanted to apologize for the last episode that we were both dragging a little bit. There were some yawns on the last episode, but we're fired up and we're excited to be here today because that's just...
we make TV. That's what we do.
That's what we do.
This is our job, is to make content, to understand. By the way, if you haven't read, Alex Hermosi does a great keynote speech on the Naval Ravikant drill down on leverage, on labor, capital, content, and code.
You know, I've been
You haven't
trying
seen
to
it,
make
it's so
TV. I can remember being like 6 years old with my grandpa and the VHS. Remember the old camcorders with the VHS, and we'd be in the backyard, and gosh, we had so much fun. We would do like Alice in Wonderland because I had blonde hair and I was a little girl, you know, and we do like fairy tales. And I remember being with the VHS to VHS, and you pause and you record, and man, I don't know, film, and maybe it's the California in me. I like it.
It's good. And you and I have been doing stuff since smartphones came out in 2008. We've been working through making TV.
Yes, our first YouTube. Oh my gosh! If you can, if we would have, yeah, that's one of those flat forehead syndromes. You know,
had three
you
kids.
Just go like this.
We had
like
3 kids in that era.
If we would have stayed on TV since 2008, Rhett and Link, look out, because I looked it up. Our show was first.
That's funny. We're a little older than they are too. So
not. We're the same age.
Are we the same age as Rhett and Link?
Yeah, same age. I think he's born in Rhett's.
I thought they were born in late 70s.
No.
Rhett was born in 77 and
Yeah.
Link was born in 78.
Yeah. So.
And Dad was born in 74 and Mom was born in
Okay,
77.
they're my age. we're older than them. So let's just channel right into that. Like, I want to exceed the expectation to the audio listener that not only are we going to talk about the iPhone 15 and its new attributes, we're going to say, hey, we're from the Silicon Valley. We've been playing with Apple product. I mean, we cut our teeth on Apple product.
I started using an Apple IIe in 1980.
At Cupertino High School, right?
No, at Fremont Older, before it burned down.
Dang.
Yeah, Fremont Older in the computer lab, kindergarten. I remember going in or it might have been first grade, but it was 80 or 81. And I remember playing Logo, the little turtle. You'd use the keys and you would make the turtle go in different directions, and then you'd leave a trail and you could make letters or words with it, I guess.
I think it was the first time that we really got to see a word processor, right? Because we would have had typewriters. Like, you took a typewriter class. I never even took a typewriter
Ted
class.
Sugita, my 8th grade typing teacher at Junior High, had us take a typing class with manual typewriters that had no
letters on them.
No letters printed on the keys. I know some people have a typewriter with, and then you put a piece of paper over so you can't see it. But there were no letters anywhere, and we had to learn all of it by muscle memory. And then each class we would learn like 2 letters with corresponding positions on the pinkies. So you would do like reach to hit E versus reach to hit I. And so that was good though, because it made me good at typing.
Yeah. And
even in the computer era, before we got to the laptops, where your depression is you're only pressing the key down a few millimeters. With the larger, more haptic keyboards, you had to push pretty hard. So it was more like a manual typewriter, to where you actually had to depress the keys. We've come. I went to Cupertino High School, which is based in Cupertino. I went to Junior High School, which is based in Cupertino. You went to Hyde, or did you go to
I went to Hyde and then
Hyde Virginia
Cupertino.
High? Yeah, and
And
then
it
Fremont Older, and you went to Eisenhower.
it was gosh,
So
I forget
we
who
grew up in this
we
area.
were talking to somebody the other day about see, I don't know, Steve Jobs had so much innovation and had so much foresight about like the apple, but our Cupertino was orchards. It was more apricot orchards than it was apple orchards, so there really isn't that correlation there. But I mean, we grew up, where we grew up, there was trees and orchards
There was
everywhere.
a granary when
There
I was a
was,
kid on the corner where the Cypress Hotel
oh
is
my
now, on the
gosh.
corner of Sunnyvale, Saratoga
Yeah.
Road, or Sunnyvale, Saratoga Road. Okay, for those that don't live in the Bay Area, Sunnyvale, Saratoga Road became De Anza Boulevard, became Highway 9. And so
Yeah.
depending on where you are, if you're in Saratoga, everybody local calls it Sunnyvale, Saratoga Road. If you're in Los Gatos, it's Highway 9. And if you're in Cupertino, crossing Stevens Creek, it's called De Anza Boulevard near De Anza College. But
the point being is not only did we see the evolution of a product line,
yeah, there was a granary.
there was an
that
evolution
processed, like,
of land.
Corn and wheat and oats on the corner where the Cypress Hotel is now, which is one of the nicest, probably the nicest hotel in Cupertino. We've stayed there a couple times, just gone to
Yeah.
get away for a couple days.
So
and
where
relax.
now we see the evolution
And-
of the mothership, which was where the orchards were, and literally a stone's throw away from the high schools and everything. And the mothership
Yeah.
is just like,
HP had a big campus there first, but before that, I remember even maybe 10 years ago, before they built up downtown Cupertino, that big, huge open field that now has
with the dead tree. We were
with the
just
dead
talking
tree.
to somebody
We're
about
like,
that dead tree.
When are they going to get rid of this?
Yeah.
I mean, look at this land. This land's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and now it's all
Yeah.
multi-purpose. It's got condos and 5-star.
So you had
Kobe
the
beef steak
opportunity,
restaurants.
and I find this is going to be interesting. So I hope this perks some. If you're listening, when you're listening, while you're listening right now, and your
While
ears
you're
start
listening.
perking up, this is where the background of what we're talking about with the kind of what the buzz of what's going on right now in today's headlines
iPhone 15.
is the iPhone 15, and this is the points of view. I read a New York Times article today that was posted. And Jeff watched the keynote yesterday, right? It came out yesterday, a couple days ago. Was it Tim Cook who did it?
He did part of it.
He did part of it. And so Jeff's coming from the point of view of he watched the keynote, and this has been something
I got
that
excited.
every year our family sits down, tunes in, and watches the keynote.
It's like Christmas in September.
I know you guys we're interesting. But I read the article. And so here's the headline of the article. So I'm letting you guys know that are listening that Jeff has not read the article, so he does not know what information I have. I have not watched the keynote, so I do not know the information that he has. But we're going to talk about it. So the headline from the New York Times article read, Apple users bash the new iPhone 15. Innovation died with Steve Jobs. And here's a direct quote. It says, Apple innovation died with Steve Jobs. Most everything since 2011 has been 0.5 to 1 degree improvements on existing products, save for the Apple Watch, which was kind of inevitable anyways. So what do you think? Do you think that now that you've watched the keynote and the hearsay kind of the buzz of the news feed is that okay, so it's titanium, big deal. Everything that, like, he innovated this amazing new product, and now all we're doing is just like incremental improvements to a product that was innovated by him.
It's not fair. It's not fair to make that comparison. One of the fun things about this show, I think, fun for me, I know it's fun for you, you get to kind of dangle this carrot over my head before each recording episode where you get to say, I know what we're talking about, and you don't. And it's kind of the impromptu gut reaction, not too prepared response to something that you're writing about. And I think it creates a little bit of healthy tension that's good for entertainment value. The first instance that I had was that you can't really do anything great by yourself. And while Steve Jobs was the face of the company, and I'm sure he reveled in Apple's failure in the late 90s before he came back, because his failure was very public. But he also talks in his Stanford speech about that failure and about how liberating it was that he could go and do what he wanted to do without having to carry this huge burden on his back. And I think that people who are going to criticize anybody who's trying to make something better, they're trying to get attention. Just like we're trying to get attention, but we're trying to get attention for something that we think is good and positive and adding value to people's lives versus just griping about something that somebody else is putting hundreds of millions of dollars of R&D and a year or more's worth of work into. And we have friends that work at Apple, and we know how hard they work. And we've got a friend of ours that all he does, like 60 hours a week, is work on the angle of the crease of the plastic. I don't even think it's plastic anymore. The recycled material that when you lift the tab, you pull the tab off of the product, the covering off of a brand new iPhone. He's on the crease team, or he runs the crease team, right, in engineering. And he was talking about Apple's almost unlimited budget to spend millions and millions or tens of millions. I don't remember what he said, but some enormous gob of money in order to continually upgrade the machines that make the crease. Right? So when you're putting that kind of effort into something and that kind of focus and scale, and then serving billions of people, if somebody's criticizing that for something that's not really adding any benefit, really, we're going to talk about why innovation is dead and why we wish we had Steve Jobs back, and they're doing seances with a Ouija board to try to channel him back into Apple. What is that? What are we doing that? That was my first response. My second response was in The Roaring 2000s by Harry S. Dent. Dent talks about how, going all the way back to Roman times, there were periods of time, about 80 years in between these small sections of time in human history of incremental innovation, and then boom, there would be typically a convergence. And it was usually 4 technologies all hitting the marketplace at the same time. And that you got not only the incremental improvement, not only the monumental improvement of technology that went from they say from 0 to 1, but the actual force multiplier effect of 4 technologies all hitting at the same exact moment in history, and it creates an explosion of innovation, an explosion of renaissance at that moment in time, that you're either a participant during that window or you're not.
Yeah.
And so I think that what we're coming out of is smartphones, high-speed internet to the house and to the home, personal computing, desktop revolution. So you have mobile, you have computing revolution. Computing was certainly first, but computing and mobile, I still use a MacBook every day. I still use my iPhone every day. They're different devices for different things, but I still use them both every day. I still use the internet every day, the high-speed internet, maybe cellular.
I guess
in
that kind of, when you're putting it that way, what we more of us than not, we don't use cameras every day. Like, there was a telephone. We used telephones every day.
The cell phone, the smartphone.
Exactly.
Replaced it.
And so
Cameras don't exist today.
That's like what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that if we're going to say that all there has been is just been 0.5, whatever the article, 0.5 to 1 degree of improvement. Couldn't the argument be posted that Steve Jobs was just improving a phone? Like, we had to have, Marconi had to have a phone, Edison had to have a phone, Bell had to have a phone.
Well, Bell invented a phone, there wasn't one.
Yeah, exactly.
Edison invented a record player, there wasn't one.
Yeah.
Edison invented a light bulb, there wasn't one.
Yeah.
So they went from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And what I was saying is, after I've had a little chance to calm down from the just, in my opinion, ridiculous point of view of somebody who's going to criticize Apple for being incremental, they're not students of life.
Yeah.
They're not taking a look at the fact that there are moments in time when you'll have a convergence of high-speed internet, mobile computing, right, incredible content, and a shift to e-commerce. E-commerce was a new thing,
yeah,
right? Amazon is to e-commerce as Henry Ford was to the automobile.
Yeah.
Right. Amazon didn't invent e-commerce. E-commerce was around before Amazon, but they were so early, and they said, we're going to do it better, faster, cheaper, one-click, mobile app, pay for subscriptions to get free shipping. Like, those the number of things that Amazon's done to improve e-commerce were like unto the assembly line from the Colt 44 revolver that Henry Ford added to. Before that was a custom, bespoke, hand-built coach that didn't have interchangeable parts and couldn't be built with economies of scale working to their advantage. So with regard to the second piece of that is Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Woz and Steve Ballmer, they were on the very, very front end of a multi-product, once in 100-year collaboration that created computing in and of itself, made something happen with the internet, moved to mobile computing, and then we start talking about software and mobile apps. And it's like, look, if you look at time in a lens of thousands of years, and you'll see every 100 years, if you go back the last 100 years, it would have been Marconi, like electricity, wireless radio, television, and the automobile. That in the 1920s, those all converged at the same time. And then if you back to like 1820s, 1830s, you have the internal combustion engine, you have the locomotive, you have the telegraph, right? And electrification of houses and cities. There's a city in Indiana, I've been to it. It was the first town that was lighted by electric lamps in, I want to say 1897, something like that. But if you go back to that, they didn't have cameras in 1820s.
Well, we were still figuring out AC/DC current.
Yeah, we didn't have AC/DC current until really 1880, late 1880s.
Yeah.
So the phonograph, Marconi with wireless, Edison with electricity,
Tesla.
Ford with the automobile, Tesla with figuring out AC and DC current and the difference between those two. That was a moment in time.
Yeah.
And to say, well, we haven't really had a lot of innovation happen in electricity in the last 50 years. Well, yeah, it's in a wire. It's over. it's in the air. Marconi. They thought Marconi was nuts. Yeah. His friends talked about having him committed to a psych ward, and I think he even was in a straitjacket and an evaluation talking about, you're talking about electricity going through the sky. What are you talking about? Yeah. And he's like, well, it's the same as us stoning, threatening to stone Galileo or Copernicus or anybody who's questioning suggest that the planets don't revolve around the Earth because that's what the Pope thought.
So then that's what we're really talking about today is where it's not the 15 necessarily. It's just about the spirit of innovation. We've got Wilbur and Orville Wright. We've got so many people that have innovated, and we think about things like, well, I know we've talked about on the podcast before, like, is it necessary to go to the moon? Well, or even to think about going to Mars, but so much technology gets developed along the way. When you reach for the stars, you're going to hit something. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And no, and I don't agree with the article. I do not believe that innovation has died with Steve Jobs, but I do know that there were some simple principles, and you've read Walter Isaac's book. We've watched the biographies, the documentaries. We've been to his house in Palo Alto. There were simple truths.
Woz's house as a kid.
There were simple truths that Steve Jobs liked to hold dear. And I know aesthetics was a simple truth. I know keeping
Simplicity,
things simple.
Minimalism
was a simple truth.
He didn't have furniture in his house.
Wore the same clothes every day, was predictable. He was a huge...
He tried to eliminate everything in his life that was noise so that it could just be quiet and come up with stuff. The other thing, too, is, for goodness sakes, let's quit comparing Tim Cook to Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs was incredibly bright, no question. Mm-hmm. Tim Cook is incredibly bright. But Tim Cook's his own man. Yeah. Tim Cook is the first openly gay CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Mm-hmm. He's been running Apple Computer for, depending on who you talk to, 15 years. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs has been gone for 12. But from the friends of mine that had direct reporting access to Tim Cook during that period of time said that he was basically the sharpest guy in every room, in every conversation that they had with him going back since they first had contact with him. And that effectively he was been running the company since 3 or 4 years before Steve had passed away, and that he was the heir apparent, but that Steve could not, announce that he was the heir apparent because Steve was still the face of the company. And Apple was also still in a fairly vulnerable period of time because They were just in the process of getting out of debt between 2007, 8, 9, when the iPhone started really getting momentum. And the other thing too, people talk about iPhone sales, which is great, but the real genius, in my opinion, of what iPhone did was it created a net new platform, very similar to the .NET platform in the Microsoft era, where you're developing a religion
Yeah.
in the developer ecosystem to say, if you want to make a living and you standardize on our platform, there will be billions of users available for you to sell your content to in the form of software for an indefinite period of time moving out in the future. And so that ecosystem is really a big part of why the iPhone is so successful. And that ecosystem is going to be a trailing indicator from the actual handset and iTunes and streaming music. And
Yeah, I was going to say that for the and that's coming back to Steve Jobs being simple and wanting things very, like, that was his actual innovative spirit, was to remove all of the noise. Like, the innovation that he created was a simple model that you even said with this new job, you're back on a MacBook, but like the MacBook talks.
So glad to be
The
back on a MacBook
MacBook
after 4
talks
years.
to the iPad, talks to the headphones, talks to the cell phone, talks to the.
Yeah, I
you
dragged
know,
my cursor over.
Yeah.
I had my, and it's all based on your Apple
Right.
login ID,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So I log in with my Apple ID on my MacBook, and I go and I drag my cursor over to the right of the screen, and it shows up on my iPad.
Yeah.
And I didn't even do anything to configure that. I was like, wait, I've got 3 screens here. I've got my MacBook screen, my actual monitor.
I love the fact that you have a phone, one of the phones, and it was like, okay, now to install this one, just put your iPad next to your phone.
Yeah,
and
put your iPhone
So
next to your
but
MacBook.
that
and
right there,
that'll be your seamless integration.
That what seems so incredibly innovative, and let's give Steve Jobs all the credit. The innovation to that was that simplify. Let's just simple.
Let's make it easy. And so I have to give a shout out to Tim Cook. I think that Tim Cook is incredibly bright. I think that he has been running the company for 10 years as the CEO. And I mean, one of the keynote speeches was one of the keynote aspects to the Worldwide Developer Conference, which I think they have a new name for it. I'm sorry, I'm murdering that too. But they did a skit with Octavia, what's her name? The gal. Don't know her last name.
It's either Newton or Wilson, but it's Octavia Spencer. Octavia Spencer.
That's it, Octavia Spencer.
I was
and
like,
she
wrong.
plays Mother Nature, coming in for her annual meeting with the top folks for green, their green initiative by 2030, and she's like cracking the whip, and then they're like responding, no, we're, the Apple Watch is a green product and it has a zero carbon foot. It's our first zero carbon footprint product. So it's a really entertaining skit as part of the keynote.
I could also just add that I too watched the keynote in the presentation.
Oh, you did?
And
Please, Andrew.
I did see that skit with Octavia. It was just such a, in my opinion, a creative way to do something that every company has to do. I mean, that skit alone just summarized Apple's aesthetic and creativity that is unmatched by any other company. It's what made them a world power.
And they have the money to put into building that, which is great. But a lot of companies have a lot of money.
Yeah, and they don't spend it.
That level of creativity from a marketing perspective. I think certainly I'm excited. I love titanium. I've loved titanium since the titanium
You
Merlin.
love airplanes.
I do. I love airplanes. Airplanes are made out of aluminum because titanium's too expensive. But my grandfather in, I want to say 1990, bought a $4,000 hand-welded Merlin titanium racing bike with Shimano Dura Ace Gruppo on it and Mavic wheels and hand
I'm assuming those are the bikes that you see the guys and they just like put them on their shoulder.
Yeah,
and
they were
just,
putting
like,
them on their
walking
shoulders.
around.
But they were putting them on their shoulders 30 years ago,
back
before carbon fiber really hit the market. Now the Specialized LA Epic was a carbon fiber bike with braced with aluminum, but to have an all titanium hand welded frame as your road bike, like, that's super bougie. So thanks, Granddad, for having the bougie road bike. But I love the color. It's a sheen and a color and a shade in its natural element that's very different from other metals. So I'm excited about an iPhone 15 being in aluminum, and I actually did a test run of what it was like to travel, because I've had an iPhone silicone case for ages. I spent some time in New York with my other phone to try to see, like, can I deal with not having the case, with having the stickiness of the silicone, because I'm pretty hard on stuff and I'm always moving fast. But I'm excited about the fact that the phone's made out of titanium. I'm excited about the fact that it's got a new OLED screen and has deeper, richer blacks and colors, and the camera that's going to be a 5x 120 millimeter photo.
Like, the apple juice.
I am drinking the apple juice Kool-Aid for sure. But the other thing is, and I was thinking about this, like after COVID, I don't know when COVID ended, but I do feel if we go back to the mid 1500s, the Medici family, which was effectively the government in the form of they had all the money. They figured out double entry accounting and took it literally to the bank. But they funded the Renaissance in Italy, in Florence and Milan, kind of mostly, but it also trickled down further down into Rome and the other districts of Italy, which were not unified as a single country at that point. They were districts and different tribes and different factions after the fall of the Roman Empire. And it had been that way for 1,100 years. But there was another aspect to the Renaissance. Now, we all look at, and as we move forward in this podcast, and we look at the theme of adding humanities, literature, philosophy, food preparation and cooking, artistry, painting, drawing, music, singing, sonatas, there's a reason for that. And that it's fueled by COVID. And the parallel that I'm drawing here is that there was a humanities renaissance that happened, as well as the art that was commissioned by the Medici family and the Pope and Catholic Church and the wealthy landowners. That was the output, was the Renaissance and the art, because the money was going into it. But the input was the bubonic plague.
Mm-hmm.
The bubonic plague killed 40% of Europe. Over an 80-year period of time, until they finally figured out, it's coming from fleas. The fleas sit on the rats.
The Black Plague.
And if you eat garlic, that could act almost like a penicillin, not quite to the degree that antibiotics do. But if you keep garlic around your neck, there's nothing spiritual about it. It's not a voodoo curse retardant. It
keeps the fleas away.
It keeps the rats away, because the rats don't like the smell of garlic, and the fleas don't like the smell of garlic. And you keep garlic around your neck, your odds of getting bubonic plague go down. Well, as they come out of this bubonic plague and they see children dying at 5 and 10 years old, and their wife of their youth in her early 20s gets bit by a flea, she has a rash, the rash turns into bubonic plague, and she's dead in 6 weeks. As they come out of that, there's this connection.
Wasn't there also a fire? I think the fire killed a bunch of the rats, and that was the tipping point.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, there was a huge
fire kills the rats stop giving bubonic plague.
Yeah, there was like and that was another calamity, was that like a lot of the buildings burnt down.
Yeah, I'm sure that was.
I think that was in the history of the rat from the movie Ratatouille. There's a short, and it's the history of the rat.
The history of the rat.
And yes, there's a calamity called the bubonic plague, the black.
I know another retardant was wax clothing, because the fleas would bounce off the wax clothing.
Wow.
Like, so I'm assuming it's clothing that's been like dipped in wax, like the wax jackets that repel water and stuff.
Plague doctors, the guys with the really long snouts, they would have garlic in the snouts, and they would wear wax coats, and it would keep
wax coats and garlic. Wow.
Keep the guys away.
Yeah.
So when I look
out
at
of calamity like COVID comes.
When I look at the bubonic plague, and certainly we're much more advanced as a species and a planet, and COVID didn't take out. I don't know how many people COVID took out, but percentage-wise, it's way less than bubonic plague. Bubonic plague was an actual epidemic.
But it did become classified through the whatever as a pandemic, so it was global.
Yeah, it was global.
It was wiping out
tens upon tens of millions of people
from the same
and
illness.
There were probably less than 500 million total. So with percentage of the population wise, it was like a third of the humans on Earth died of the bubonic plague for a 50-60 year period of time. And then they figured out what was causing it, and they get through it and they get over it. And I didn't mean get over it as if to be insensitive to the loss, but they get through that period where people are dying of the bubonic plague on the regular. And then they're like, crap, we're going to be dead anyway.
Yeah.
Let's get on with living our life. Let's drink. Let's make love.
Yeah.
Let's eat. Let's enjoy our existence here and make art. And so the parallel that I'm seeing here is it seems like people coming out of COVID in a small way are very much interested in going out and trying the new restaurants and trying wine and traveling. I remember last year when I started traveling a little bit, the airports were stuffed with people. Every flight was jam-packed with people. They were doing anything they could to try to get people on flights during COVID to try to keep the cash flows coming in so they could support the payrolls. And then an inflection point hit, people started traveling and you could not, every hotel was full, every plane was full to the max because people wanted to live their lives.
What was astonishing to me most recently, we went to Disneyland and we went to California Adventure Park, and I was surprised to see the sheer amount of people that were waiting in line and pressed literally nose to nose, shoulder to shoulder to see Rogers, the Broadway-esque play at California Adventure Park for more than their first time. This is like repeat viewers of this play, this 15 to 20 minute play, which was phenomenal. And so
it was great.
The thing that kind of sticks out in my mind about that is it ran for a limited time. It was just a limited time engagement. But here you've got people who are there to go to the park, go to the rides, go to that's the main attraction are the rides. But you've got these people that are shoulder to shoulder, nose to nose, waiting in line to go and sit and watch a performance, to watch theater happen, and take an hour because you got to wait. I mean, you have to get your thing in the virtual queue. It was like oh my gosh, the virtual queue was like 12:45. We had to be there.
And we stood in line for 40 minutes. And there was 1,500 people. 40
minutes. So like by the time that it took a good hour and a half chunk out that we could have been doing it, all the other attractions and all these things, to sit and to be in a theater environment with, I don't know how many people you think that was a pretty big auditorium. It had an upper balcony and everything. So you've got like 3,500 people. You're sitting down with 3,400 of your best friends for a 30-minute thing, a 2-hour commitment out of the middle of your day when you've paid $160
for your family to go to Disneyland that day.
But yet here we have the opportunity. How awesome is it that here we are sitting with 3,400 of our best friends taking the opportunity to attend a theater level experience, and we're taking it. We're taking theater
and we
experiences.
Had it was great actors doing the job.
Yeah, it was worth it. And I would do it again. And that's why we were in line and there were other people saying do it again. So to your point about this renaissance of humanities and bringing humanities
people
back.
want to drink wine and eat cheese and be outside and travel and see their friends and see brick buildings and brick pavers.
And let's be honest, they want titanium phones.
Yeah. And I'm going to get one tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock.
See, to me, and I'm not bashing Android here. I love Samsung products. I love Android. I'm just not familiar. I grew up.
They have
like we said, we drank apple juice. We're drinking the apple juice. But a flip phone to me is complicated. That's another. I just always learned with engineering that the more parts you have, the more chance something's going to break down.
Yeah. And they do break down. I mean, Jeffrey's gone to the mat on the Galaxy whatever phone with the flipping.
He got rid of that though.
He's like,
no.
Yeah.
But that's what
47.
I mean, let's talk for a minute.
Flips in it.
Talk for a minute about. I mean, we've had in 27 years, y'all. We've had. I can't tell you how many cars we've had. But
gosh.
if you want to
count them, but
there's a brand, we've owned it, and all I can say is that there are certain brands that are dedicated to this concept of simplicity. Like no matter how expensive it is, the Mercedes is a simple vehicle to where the turning signal is exactly, you put your hand down and it's exactly there. It's right where it should be. the where you adjust your seat is you put your hand down and it's right there. The dashboard, just only the things that you are required.
I miss my car.
It's there.
I miss it.
But there's something to be said for that. What's that statement? I'm sorry I wrote you a long letter. I didn't have enough time
Mark
to
Twain.
edit it.
Yeah, Mark Twain said, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the concept is that editing takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take a 2 or 3 page concept and boil it down to a paragraph, you got to figure out what can be left out and what's absolutely essential. And I think that the neat thing about what we're seeing in this release is that iPhone being made as simple as it can be made, as essential as it can be made, is actually having a very big explosion and excitement, because I've read a lot of articles of people that are thrilled. This is the first time I've been excited about a new iPhone in probably 10 years. And part of it is iOS 17. I mean, one of the things for iOS 17, and this isn't a technology show by any means, but we live in the center of Silicon Valley in San Jose, which has dubbed themselves the capital of Silicon Valley. If you look at Freeform, which is not really a well-announced app in, I want to say iOS 16, but I could have been 15. But Freeform is like your OneNote, right? It's a drawing application. It's more complicated than Notes. It has the ability to scroll out, and it's where you can actually have a canvas size piece of paper to work on versus your Notes app, which you cannot zoom in and out on Notes. One of the cool things for Freeform, and one of the things that's been bothering me about OneNote on an iPad for 7 or 8 years, is it's just a static pen signature. There's no flow to it. There's nothing with a shape. There's no stencil. It's just a static line. And Freeform in iOS 17, which comes out in next week, I think, has a fountain pen nib feature on it. And I've been on my iPad now for 5 years. I use it all the time. I've got screen protectors on it that make it feel like paper. And I'm kind of waiting to get over the hump of when are we going to get something with a little aspect to it that's not Procreate, which is a app designed completely for art. And that I think that's cool. I'm excited about the fact that I got a fountain pen nib on iOS 17's version of Freeform, because I'm on Freeform on my iPad all the time. And so it's something that actually I think is actually useful. It's beautiful. It's creative. And so these little iterative pieces of improvement will end up leading to the larger chunks. But the really large chunk that we saw Steve Jobs and Woz take advantage of, I think was certainly a function of how smart they were, but and good, and how much they knew what people wanted, and a function of how free they were because of Steve Jobs' self-image, which was just fantastic. But it was also a moment in time when they had a bunch of technologies coming together. Yeah. And you can't.
I was thinking about that.
Big
I was thinking about while you were talking
demand.
about that, the Game Boy with the heads-up display of actual pictures, BlackBerry with their ability to do email on the phone with the text.
Who would have thought that gaming in the early 2000s would take over the dollar, the highest dollar for content consumed over all music throughout all of history combined, and all movies, and all television, and all cable channels, and all professional sports combined, and gaming is bigger than that? Yeah. Who would have thought that gaming would take over that?
Speaking of which, we got to watch Tetris. I want to go watch Tetris.
Oh, you want to watch Tetris?
It was a good movie. And that's an Apple original.
There's another movie. What's the other movie? Since we're plugging movies, we're not getting paid to plug. Yeah. What's the other movie that's out that I wanted to take you to? I talked about it
the Greek Wedding 3.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Yeah. Who doesn't want to go see that? It's awesome.
Well, I think that we're getting the finger signal that we are coming close.
It's a wave. It's the Andrew wave.
It's the Andrew wave from Andrew, who we are so glad has participated in the conversation today. Is there any final thoughts that you have as we close out on this circle of innovation that we're talking about?
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for listening, liking, subscribing, and doing all those things that you've done. We are so close to the 100 subscribers marks that we're doing our little song and our little dance, and we just want to thank you for making the Jeff Heilman Project a project worth pursuing.
Thanks. Talk soon.